Hasmik Knyazyan. Հասմիկ Կնյազյանը Հայաստանի Գիտությունների Ակադեմիայի Հնագիտության եւ Ազգագրության ինստիտուտի
Anthropology and Archaeology, Anthropology Department junior researcher. She will be speaking about laundry. It's called well-organized laundry, the city courtyard as a panopticon. A very exciting subject. Thank you. I will continue in English.
In Armenia, you will definitely identify some examples with special criteria regularities. As the locals say, laundry hanging out by rule and order. I have here some of these collectively known non-formal rules. I'm sorry. So, for example, hanging according to the color, white with white, black with black, or according to the type combinations. For example, towels with towels, trousers with trousers, t-shirts with t-shirts, or according to the size, the same size clothes together. Sequencing the laundry based on height. Selecting a hidden position on the rope for underwear. Hanging direction, for example, for every type of the clothing there is special direction. Age factor, differentiation clothing according to age. Gender factor, differentiation clothing by gender. Or hanging form, upside or not, or distance between. If you look attentively, you will see that the clothes, they have special distance from one to other. This one is like universal example, when we have the color, size, gender, etc. So, when being asked about laundry hanging practices, people speak not only about its rational, practical function, but also in the context of other meanings. In many cases, before starting the washing, the clothes were already being sorted according to the type of textile, coloring factor, hygiene requirements, washing time, and the economy of cleaning product. Also for further usability purposes. However, many such factors conditioned by functional circumstances are interpreted and probably during that time perceived as aesthetic ones. In parallel to this, however, there are developed rules which defined any rational explanation. For example, hanging from long to short among the same type of clothes, special positions on separate places for hanging underwear where the visibility is minimized, using the same color clothespins or clotheslines for every clothing. I'm trying to find out the meaning people give to the way of laundry hanging and the sociocultural aspects, circumstances that determine these meanings in Armenian society. What perceptions are there on the ways of hanging out laundry in Armenia, and why the aesthetic factor of this practice used to be or is so relevant in Armenian culture? The other one, what social and cultural aspects promoted the formation and stabilization of this practice? And what do the changes in this stabilized norm say about the present day reality? I want to tell a little bit about my fieldwork. Mainly I got my material during many years of observation. I have registered it using different anthropological fieldwork methods and approaches. Mainly it was observation and incidental observation. For example, I like one of the examples of such an observation. I was living with a girl in a shared apartment. One day the wind blew her bras from the clothesline and they ended up hanging in the tree near the window of the neighbor in the bottom floor. For a long time, she didn't go to ask the neighbors to get her bras back because she didn't want anyone to know that they belonged to her. So you can imagine what kind of valuable fieldwork material I registered during this period, because that lasted almost 6 months. So, for the analysis of fieldwork material, I used sources on the social history of Armenian family, transformation model, demographic changes of the population of Soviet Armenian, some references to the anthropology of material objects, semiotics, and the concept of public and private spaces. However, this text is an analysis of primarily fieldwork material, which yet need to be theoretically reflected. Washing the dirt away manually was the earliest method of doing laundry. From the descriptions depicting the Armenian daily life in 19th century, we can assume that both washing and hanging the clothes out for drying were public practices. Apart from these 4th centuries, laundry has been one of the most female works. Laundresses are depicted in many postcards and depictions in operettas. That is why there are so many feministic texts on this topic. In this photo, for example, they reversed the gender roles of this practice, ironically stressing how unusual it is. Now that multifunctional washing machines have become part of mass consumption, we often hear the following expressions in daily life. I have a washing machine, so why do I need to pick a wife? Or you don't wash, but your daughter-in-law, that means washing machine does it, doesn't she? These are referring to the so-called traditional Armenian family model, the end of 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, based on economic relations. The division of labor in that period family was based on gender principle, male outdoor and female indoor work. An Armenian proverb which reflects that this tradition says, a man is an outer wall of house and a woman is an inner wall of it. When we project this perception onto the practice of laundry hanging in Armenian culture, we see how this female job has broken free of the inner wall and appear onto the outer wall. According to common perceptions of this period, a person's work skills were directly linked with their personal characteristics and social status. Moreover, in that social system, a person was not considered as an individual. They were identified with the family and kinship ties, therefore being responsible for the respect, honor, and authority of their families. Back then, when passing the streets, one of my interlocutors told me, I like to watch the hang laundries, and each set told a lot about the family it belonged to. That is why our laundry must be unique. So my first thesis is that described role structure of the Armenian family and its future transformations, the way of community relationship is one of the circumstances which led to so much attention on aesthetic rather than the practical function of hanging out laundry. So, okay. The practice of hanging out laundry in public spaces is often used to portray a concept of openness, transparency, and publicity in many art performances, in social and political protests, mainly raising tabooized, silenced, hidden, problematic topics. For instance, in 2015, an art installation was created in the middle of a soccer field where thousands of washed skirts and dresses were hung on the clotheslines. Its aim was to raise the issue of 20,000 women who were victims of sexual violence during the Kosovo War. According to the conceptual artist Alehata Hafa Mripa, air dirty laundry in public is a way of saying, talk about your private issues in public, but in this case, the laundry is washed clean, like the women survived who are clean, pure, they carry no stain. In this regard, there is an opposite saying in Armenia stating a similar meaning, don't air your dirty laundry in public. In this saying, airing your dirty laundry is metaphorically identified with the publicizing of family conflicts and private discussions. Between this symbolic dichotomy of outside and inside, public and private, the laundry in Armenia can be considered as mostly public, at least because the climate in Armenia is favorable for drying laundry outside all year round. Another of my theses is that the demonstrative nature of drying laundry is the main aspect which makes the practice so canonized. So, the human creates several material frames through which he communicates with the outer world, city, house, clothing, etc. These frames directly connected with the studied practice because it's semiotic and physical borders. Windows and balconies symbolically provide the permeability of the borders through which hanging out laundry links the intimate personal space with the public one. Being maximally close to the human body, clothes in traditional culture are identified with the person more than other material objects. In this sense, they are customized for different kinds of spaces. For intimate space, underwear, indoor clothing, private space, leisure wear, public space, outdoor clothing. This is the reason why items of underwear being directly related to intimate areas of the human body have their special position and location on clothesline, which is usually far from outsiders' visibility zone. Although clothes have their static places in certain parts of inside of a house, they differ from other interior objects by their mobility. And in appearing in public space, they become the objects of various interpretations, which close to the semiotization phenomenon characterized by denoting signs come to the fore and physical reference fed into the background, which later may disappear altogether. The multi-story apartment buildings, which were rapidly appearing in the urban landscape of Soviet cities of that period, however, were not provided special facilities for drying clothes outside. Welded rollers and metal pillars and attached to them clotheslines, sometimes linked from the walls of opposite buildings. Until now are functioning in the backyards and had obviously been installed at the initiative of new residents. For example, in this case, we have the clotheslines connected from one building to another one. Or in this case, we have that pillar and all the lines, they started from there. However, the drying procedure used to be public in Tsarist and early Soviet period when the laundry in the cities was hanging out in the houses with so-called Italian yard. Like in this case, this photo is taken from the movie, and now this is the same yard nowadays. Later, these were replaced with new Soviet multi-story apartment building with shared yards. This kind of rural yard, by its communication traditions during few decades, moved from this to this. In a few conditions transformed in an urban community with its understanding of public and personal spaces, differing to those common to rural perceptions. In these conditions, hangout laundry emerged in the center of common visibility of community members, metaphorically creating a phenomenon effect. Creating a panopticon effect. Let me remind that the population of Yerevan from 1950s to 1960s grew from 300,000 to 1,218,000 as a result of mechanical migration. Remembering that period, one of my interviews comparing the way of hanging out laundry nowadays said, what color, what kind of laundry you can see nowadays. But in our times, she means 1960s, 1980s, one could meet maybe two who would hang out on untidy laundry in the whole region. I assume that this practice reached its peak of regulation as a result of industrialization and urbanization processes following in Soviet Armenia from 1950s to 1969. These tendencies were accompanied by the penetration of rural traditions into urban settlements, and many elements of rural everyday life practices moved to cities and started to be adapted to the new conditions. Among those was the practice of drying washed clothes outside, which was so common for the rural private houses. For example, this cartoon depicts the Yerevan yard, and you can see many rural everyday life practices here. And like these photos, here we see drying wool, dry fruits, or sorrel, which is also very common rural practices. I suggest to watch this extract from the movie The Man, directed by Edmond Kyosayan. It shows how Sunday laundry closes the view and prevents the hero from seeing a girl in the opposite apartment. Another aspect was the tightly scheduled labor regime in that period, which resulted in the same frequency and synchronized fulfillment of this everyday practice. Due to the highly regulated lifestyle in industrial city, contemporaries remembered that all housewives were busy in the laundry on weekends, and the streets and courtyards were covered by laundry chains. This created a situation of simultaneously performing a demonstrative practice by also promoting the emergence of sense of competition among the neighborhood community members, where they were learning the right way of hanging out laundry and becoming each other's public critics. In this post-travel blogger Piotr Volygin suggests the laundry claim to be one of the small symbols of the country. With this meme of the image of an old worn book by the title The Rules of Hanging Out Laundry, Armenian Laundry, with a note additional publication in the bottom, by this way ironically stressing the popularity and demand for such a book. By my last year's observations in social media shows that many photographers focusing the laundry as a main attribute of urban landscape. There are also some photographers for whom taking laundry photos is one of the primarily topics in their art. Also, I have heard ideas of turning the most popular laundry hanging out places like it is in Stepanakert into touristic attraction. These tendencies of exoticization, romanticization, or irony indicate an anachronism in relation to create by years such perception. The most relevant changes during the Soviet years were referring to the social role of women within the family. Despite this, the free generation family model didn't change her responsibilities as housewife, and the quality requirements of her domestic work were straightened. After independence, when the industrial economy was totally destroyed and women's work again returned to the housewife role, the qualitative demand of women's labor persisted. All the current labor market, mainly based on the service industry, is gradually changing the traditional image of the Armenian woman. These changes are also highly conditioned by the mass availability of modern goods and technologies. For example, the contemporarily colorful linens don't require special ways of bleaching, so those visually cease to be considered as a marker of one's cleanliness. The replacement of the planning economy, standard clothing, with the consumer economy, diversity of clothing, make the daily object's lifetime shorten. Clothing itself has been adapted to cleaning by washing machines, which is why washing is not personalized anymore. Moreover, contemporary clothes dryers designed to dry clothes at home minimize the demonstrativeness of laundry, hiding laundry from the public gaze. So my conclusion is that the modernizing Armenian family material objects promote changing family members' roles, particularly those of women. Moreover, the number of nuclear families is increasing, which in turn promotes the loosening of community neighborly ties, leading to the deactualization of this practice, to stereotypical perception, and increasing its practical function. Thank you. It's all I wanted to tell.
Շատ շնորհակալություն Հասմիկ, շատ գունագեղ.
Thank you very much, Hasmik, for a very colorful presentation.